All right, welcome to the first demo of we're calling it Save My Parents. That is a work in progress name. It's due to the nature of the story, which we won't get into here. Um, anyway, for this demo, for this chat, I wanted to talk about uh, the primary driving technology uh, choices that we made and some of the struggles that we run into with them, and what we did to resolve those struggles. So this is Unity. This is what we chose for our game engine. I spent a lot of time with Unreal Engine, and I really like Unreal Engine, but for 2D stuff, which is our game is 2D, I feel that Unity was a little better suited. So we went that route. And for the artwork and animation, we chose to use Toon Boom Harmony. It's an industry tool for like video, production video, artwork and animation, and it's really good at that. So we loved the tool for that capability. It also coincidentally had an ability to export the node tree from Toon Boom Harmony to Unity, so that we could get these individual assets, and be able to manipulate them. Unfortunately, though, out of the box, the Toon Boom importer in Unity is very limiting. You have to do things the way they intend, and what they intend is really not good for anything outside of the standard quickie demo. Look, I click on this thing and it animates kind of a game, and we're just butting our heads into all kinds of problems with that left and right. The animations were difficult to control. You kind of had to play the whole scene. Um, Let me take a step back. One of the main issues with Toon Boom that we had was a design choice that we made around how we wanted to use it. So for for our purposes, we found the best iteration workflow was to be able to draw the entire scene in Toon Boom, and including all these entities or assets, what we're going to call them, and import them into Toon Boom. But we we wanted the scene as a singular unit, but we wanted all the parts to be addressable and work independently. Toon Boom doesn't really give you this. It claims to give you this, but it doesn't, because everything's tied. All the animations are tied to the root. So, if you want to animate this thing and you want to animate this thing, it's it's really just one long sequence. And it's just not what we were looking for. So the right way to use Toon Boom, in my opinion, is for every single asset that you want, you got to draw it as a separate project, import it into Unity independently, and assemble all of them into the scene. That's not a bad pattern. But when you have so many objects in the scene and you want to be able to place them like a stage in Toon Boom so that you can choreograph animations and things, it just doesn't work very well. So we found that to be the biggest limiting factor, and it was solvable with code, and so that's the route we chose to go, and we chose to solve it with code. So how did we solve this? Well, our goal was we wanted to be able to draw the whole scene, animate each individual thing within that scene, and pull all that into Unity, but then have those animations separate, have the entities separate. And to do that, we completely threw out the Toon Boom importer, rewrote it from scratch. No, I don't want to lie or take credit for everything. I mean, Toon Boom's code was visible. We certainly borrowed parts of it, but the decisions that they were making about how to link the nodes and everything, we just pulled it all apart. We ran through all of the entities, disconnected them from the root. We went through all the animations, found, where they related to which entity and such, recentered their center anchor points. And, basically what we ended up with was, we were able to import the relationships, the hierarchy, but everything else was scratch. So what were some of the problems we had with the using Toon Boom's importer? So disassembling, disassemble. So I think the let me just sum it up to say the biggest issue with Toon Boom, with the workflow that we had, was that every time we wanted to update an asset, redraw this or redraw that, we would essentially have to destroy the entire scene and re-import the entire scene. And this was really problematic for an engineering decision that we made. This is my fault. We have these things which, for lack of a better term, I call a decorator. And that's, in hindsight, it's not the best term anymore, but it's because it's a dummy object that decorates the asset, but it itself isn't the controller, but you attach controllers to it. So I didn't have a better name for it. So anyway, we called it a decorator, but it's the anchor point for the controllers, and the controllers operate on the assets. And the first thing you're going to say is, well, why are you embedding these controllers right in there in the scene? Yes, exactly. That is a poor design choice. However, the difference was about how quickly we could iterate. For us, when we would place all these controllers, or decorators somewhere outside of the Toon Boom harmony stack, the hierarchy, the problem was every time we would destroy the scene and pull it back in to get updates, we'd have to relink all of these decorators back to the entity that they control, and it was a nightmare. So we tried all kinds of things, like trying to link them by name, but it was a mess. And the best way to do it was to automate the creation of these decorators, attach them to these entities, and so the scene is now like declarative, where we have views, we have controllers, but the views themselves they're kind of like an abstraction. So we have like a reference to a view, and when we destroy the scene, the reference remains. The asset that's connected to that reference is gone. When we regenerate all the assets and pull them back in, the artwork is fulfilled within this dummy object, and everything magically works fine. So this is great because it allows us to move objects around, add controllers to them. So basically the scene becomes a scaffold that we can shape, and we can operate with transforms, so like we can move objects around the scene, but it doesn't have to be destructive to the scene we actually get from Toon Boom. So this was like a really great hybrid, and I will demonstrate how it works later. But so that was the main challenge. The main challenge was being able to iterate quickly, pulling in asset changes, because this was something we were doing 10 times a day, because we wanted to be able to, give me this new artwork, let me plug it in, let me see how it goes. So that iterative process needed to be very fast, very silky smooth, and it wasn't. And so we made a technological trade-off of going with these decorator pattern. But to get away from the smell of having these controllers embedded in our views, we then pulled the views out, and they are just assets that get associated with these anchors, placeholders, references, whatever you want to call them. And so now we can structure the scene with non-assets, and then the assets get hydrated into it, and it's really nice. All right, I think I said this twice. I'll stop repeating myself. Now, what else? So the animations were all tied to the root node of the tree that we got from Toon Boom. We had to extract all of those and then reattach them back to the entities themselves. For example, let me see. So like I have an animation here. Well, I won't get sidetracked, but this was another challenge. We had to completely throw out the Unity animation framework. This wasn't really a big deal, but I can talk about that more later. So we can sample play this animation, right? Obviously, they're not linked up. That's because we're in demo mode. If I play it, for example, stop. Let's see. Let me reload the scene. Sometimes I have to kick it. Okay. Say now she's in idle mode. When I click on the drawer, she links up. We don't have the what am I trying to say? The reverse animation, but you get the idea. All right. So the difficulty here is she animates, the drawer animates. They are separate entities. How do you choreograph the two? Well, in Toon Boom, when you get this tree of nodes and all the animations are applied to the entire tree, you can't decouple these animations. They're tied, and that's just a deal breaker. So another part of the thing we had to roll our own on was we had to do away with the Unity animation framework, and we had to do away with the way Toon Boom stored these animations within the tree, the Toon Boom file that we get. So our importer skims through all the code, finds all the animations, pulls them out, attaches them to the root entity that they relate to, but then the center point for that object is all wrong, and so we have to go and relink it. Anyway, this is not the time for patting myself on the back. The point is, animations were a big issue, so we had to go and redo all that. And then the other deal was Toon Boom's, the shaders they give you were tied to their animations. So, for example, if you use any kind of bone deformers inside of Toon Boom, you have to use their animation framework, which was which was dependent on using their shaders, because the shader is what would be doing the frame by frame incrementing across their their bone deformers. So that was a real issue as well. We decided to not use bone deformers, and we would bake our animations because we wanted to be able to do lit shaders. So we had to build our own shader. So now what we get is something like this, where I can actually grab a light, and I can move it around, and it actually makes shadows. Though it looks awful because for shadows you actually need depth. So we'll talk about that more in a minute. So yeah, there was a lot of issues with Toon Boom, but on the other side of solving this problem, now that we've tackled the majority of these hurdles, I'm very glad that we chose Toon Boom. I'm very glad we chose Unity. I'm very glad we chose to roll our own importer and other, because now we have a great deal of flexibility. We can do whatever we want, and we're not, limited. So that's nice. I think I'm going to call this video done, But in the next video, I think I'll give you some more samples about the game, some of the technological challenges we had to make with the game. So yeah, stay tuned, and more on that coming up next.